And what is next for Kevin Durant, an all-time great player who had an absolutely sensational season?
By the way, the general manager, please, defy what? Fred VanVleet got hurt in like June, and you couldn't see your team needed a point guard, and you let Kevin Durant bring the ball up court continuously in a playoff game to where he has 9 turnovers? That's fireable. Get out.
There's a question hanging over the NBA right now that nobody in Houston wants to answer honestly. One of the most gifted scorers this league has ever seen might already be halfway out the door. It has happened before. Brooklyn watched it unfold. Phoenix watched it unfold. And now the same warning signs are creeping back into Houston. Every time it starts with a bold promise. A championship is finally within reach. Every time it ends the exact same way. Locker room tension, public finger-pointing, a trade request nobody saw coming, except everybody actually did. Tonight, we are not asking if Kevin Durant can still score. We are asking something much harder. Is he chasing a title or quietly running from himself, one franchise at a time?
Co-betting favorite is now the Phoenix Suns, only because Kevin Durant put him at the top of his wish list.
Well, the message that Rafael Stone, their general manager, sent out yesterday was that he was a pretty big miscalculation. So,
Rockets trade rumors and disappointing year one results. Numbers rarely lie, even when a star's reputation tries hard to cover for them. Houston paid a real steep price to land Kevin Durant. Jalen Green, a rising young scorer with real upside. Dillon Brooks, a legitimate rotation piece. A top 10 pick added on top. The idea was straightforward. Add a proven closer and turn a young, promising roster into a real threat. Instead, the Rockets finished with the exact same win total as the season before Durant ever arrived. No jump, no real progress, just a pricier roster producing an identical result. And already, deep in this offseason, Houston's name keeps surfacing in trade talks with Detroit, Miami, and Denver. This is not about Durant losing his scoring ability. It is about something quietly breaking down.
In Brooklyn is trying to win a championship. It's not about LeBron, it's about them.
Make it work. You have James Harden, Kevin Durant, and Kyrie Irving on the same team.
You don't get to the NBA Finals, it is a bust. This is
no, they're all in.
You have those 3 guys, you're supposed to get to the finals at
the Nets' extension and trade request timeline. Rewind to Brooklyn to see exactly where this pattern truly began, because that is where the blueprint first got written. In 2021, Durant signed a massive 4-year extension worth nearly $200 million. On the surface, that looked like total commitment, a long-term bet built around one core group for years to come. But just 12 months later, he asked out entirely. And the timing tells the real story here. He requested his exit on the exact same day his co-star, Kyrie Irving, signed his own extension with that same franchise. One superstar locking in publicly in front of cameras, while the other was already quietly plotting his exit behind the scenes. That is not misfortune. That is not just one rough season souring things. That is a superstar who signs the paperwork but never fully buys into the plan once real adversity actually hits.
Amen Thompson was asked about an hour ago how KD is feeling, and he said, to be honest with you, I don't know.
Durant demanding Steve Nash and Sean Marks be fired or traded. This is where the leadership conversation becomes impossible to avoid any longer. In Brooklyn, Durant reportedly gave owner Joe Tsai a direct ultimatum: remove head coach Steve Nash, remove general manager Sean Marks, or send him elsewhere immediately. The same coach Durant himself had pushed the organization to hire in the first place. The same front office built entirely around keeping him satisfied on and off the floor. Then he publicly criticized his own starting lineup, questioning out loud what could realistically be expected from the players around him. Former teammate Goran Dragic backed that concern up publicly too, saying the locker room always centered on individual stardom rather than the team as a whole. And when critics called this a leadership issue, Durant's own words did the damage himself. He said, quote, "I'm not a leader," unquote. one of the most talented players ever to play this game, admitting on record that leadership was never really his role, while still expecting franchises to build entire championship windows around him.
I believe that Kevin Durant is the greatest scorer to ever touch a damn basketball. I believe that he still puts the ball in the basket better than majority of the NBA.
Durant's true shooting numbers and individual greatness, here is what makes all of this genuinely painful. Because on a purely individual level, Durant remains one of the most efficient scorers the sport has ever seen. Full stop. No debate needed. His career true shooting sits above 62%, the second best mark ever recorded among players with 20,000 career points, trailing only Stephen Curry in the history of this league. He produces well over 1.28 points per shot attempt, numbers most players never sniff at any single point in their entire careers, no matter how gifted they are. This is not decline. This is a player still performing at a historically elite level, night after night, regardless of who is guarding him or how many defenders get thrown his way. Yet despite all of that brilliance, despite every bit of that rare efficiency, Durant has not reached a single conference final since leaving Golden State behind for good. Not alongside Harden and Irving in Brooklyn, a trio loaded with talent on paper. Not alongside Booker and Paul in Phoenix, a team that had already made the finals before he even showed up. Not yet in Houston either, where the pattern already looks eerily familiar to everyone paying attention. Somehow, the most efficient high-volume scorer of his entire generation keeps landing on teams that fall apart exactly when it matters most.
Well, the message that Rafael Stone, their general manager, sent out yesterday was that he was a pretty big miscalculation. So anybody who thinks Kevin Durant's going to be on the trade block at the trade deadline, what have you.
Current 2026 Rocket situation and possible trade destinations. Which brings everything back to this very moment, deep inside the 2026 offseason. Houston is once again tangled in trade speculation, and this round feels more serious than the usual offseason noise that follows every star. Detroit is reportedly willing to part with real draft capital and legitimate rotation talent just to get a deal finalized before the deadline hits. Denver is watching quietly from a distance, still working through its own internal cap situation before making any real move. Miami remains in the background too, even with complicated salary logistics standing directly in the way of any realistic deal. Meanwhile, the personal controversy that has quietly trailed Durant for years now has still never been properly addressed by anyone involved, and that silence continues to carry real weight around the league. If Houston stumbles even slightly early this season, this exact script writes itself all over again. A restless superstar growing tired of losing, a scrambling front office searching for answers, a very public debate about accountability playing out everywhere, and eventually, another trade request lands quietly on somebody's desk, the same way it always seems to eventually happen once patience finally runs out on both sides. We already watched this film play out in Brooklyn from beginning to end. We already watched the sequel unfold in Phoenix. The only real question left standing is which city gets the next chapter and how many more times this cycle repeats before it permanently reshapes how Kevin Durant ends up being remembered.